Tax overhaul states protecting the wealthy. Democrats seek to help wealthy in response to tax changes. Cherry Hill, New Jersey. AP. Resistance to the Republican tax overhaul comes with an ideological twist for some Democratic state officials that have styled themselves as champions of the working class, but are pushing hard for measures that would reduce taxes mostly for the wealthy. The state senates in California and New Jersey have passed bills that would allow residents to make charitable contributions instead of paying some state and local taxes. The idea is that they could get a federal tax deduction for the contributions. That would partially replace deductions they're losing under the new federal tax law. The policy mostly helps top earners. Versions of it have passed or are under consideration in Connecticut, Maryland, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island and the District of Columbia. Trump Panama Hotel during Trump Hotel strife, a Trump mojito but no water. Panama City, AP. The Trump Hotel in Panama City retains its status as one of the city's finest, but you'll have to overlook the intermittently running water, last Friday's 4-hour power outage and the occasional police presence in the lobby. The hotel remains open for business against a backdrop of service interruptions, bad press and a fight over the Trump Organization's management contract. That dispute led to fisticuffs and repeated police calls last week. Here's what one guest was heard fuming about when told one day last week that access to running water wouldn't be restored for hours. "This isn't what you expect from a luxury hotel." The hotel's lobby is notable mostly for its shortage of guests, compensated for by a generous allotment of reporters and security staff bracing for renewed confrontations. Italy politics. The latest. Italy polling lines blamed on anti-fraud checks. Rome, AP. The latest on Italy's national election on Sunday, all times local, 4:35 p.m. Italian authorities are urging voters to leave plenty of time to cast their ballots since the process is taking longer than usual due to new anti-fraud measures. Voters have complained of long lines, some of more than an hour, at polling stations around the country. Rome City Hall urged voters to head out as soon as possible, or at least an hour before polls close at 11 p.m. 2200 GMT, Sunday. City authorities said the delays were due in great part to new anti-fraud measures. Slovakia journalist killed. The latest. Slovak PM rejects government changes over slaying Bratislava, Slovakia, AP. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico has dismissed the president's proposals to resolve the crisis, the political crisis resulting from the slayings of an investigative reporter and his fiancée. Fico said Sunday that any change in the current three-party coalition government would have to be approved by the coalition members and President Andrei Kiska has no say in it. Kiska, Fico's rival, called earlier Sunday for substantial changes in the country's coalition government or for an early election because of a huge distrust of the public in the state. Fico said the president's proposals denied the result of the 2016 parliamentary election. A junior coalition party and the opposition have called on Interior Minister Robert Kalanak to resign. AP US trade politics. The latest. May tells Trump of Britain's deep concern. Washington, AP. British Prime Minister Theresa May has spoken with President Donald Trump and expressed deep concern about his threatened trade war with the European Union. May's office says she discussed the issue with Trump during a telephone call Sunday. Trump has threatened to tax European cars if the EU boosts tariffs on American products in response to the president's plan to increase duties on steel and aluminum. May's office says she raised our deep concern at the president's forthcoming announcement on steel and aluminum tariffs, noting that multilateral action was the only way to resolve the problem of global overcapacity. The leaders also discussed Syria and humanitarian concerns in eastern Ghouta. May's office says they agreed the overwhelming responsibility for suffering falls on the Syrian government and Russia, its main backer. Guns slow sales. Trump slump in gun sales continues despite control debate. Columbus, Ohio, AP. Gun store owners say the so-called Trump slump in sales has continued despite renewed calls for controls after the massacre at a Florida high school last month. Sales of firearms slowed dramatically after the election of Republican Donald Trump as president in 2016 allayed fears of a Democratic crackdown on gun owners. David Dobransky runs a small gun store in North Canton, Ohio. He says the day after Trump's election, it was as if someone turned off a faucet. Sales have slumped since then, and nothing has changed recently. In Rapid City, South Dakota, things are back to normal at Rapid Fire Firearms after panic buying under President Barack Obama. Gun makers Sturm, Ruger and American Outdoor Brands have both seen their stocks plunge since Trump was elected. Film box office: Black Panther is box office king for third straight week. Los Angeles, AP. Wakanda's reign over America shows no signs of waning. Black Panther is king of the U.S. box office for the third straight weekend. Studio estimates Sunday say the Marvel movie brought in $65 million this weekend, easily outpacing new releases Red Sparrow and Death Wish. Black Panther has now grossed $500 million domestically after 3 weeks of release. It's the third fastest film to reach the $500 million plateau and is now in the top 10 all-time in U.S. box office, not adjusted for inflation. Fox's Red Sparrow, featuring Jennifer Lawrence as a Russian ballerina turned super spy, earned $17 million in its first weekend. Death Wish, MGM's reboot of the Charles Bronson action franchise starring Bruce Willis, was third with $13 million. School shootings: threats and consequences after Parkland. Even idle school threats get tough response. Minneapolis, AP. 15 students in one Florida school district face felony charges for making alleged threats since the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School massacre. Meanwhile, an autistic Orono High School student in Minnesota whose alleged threat led to a 6-hour lockdown is in juvenile court. He's received an outpouring of sympathy and donations for his family. The February 14th killings of 17 people in Parkland, Florida, ignited the usual copycat threats. Most prove unfounded, but they cause big disruptions. Authorities' swift responses are underscoring how even idle threats will result in serious consequences. The Volusia County District in Florida isn't taking chances. The local sheriff has a zero-tolerance policy. He says students who make threats or their families will have to pay the costs of the investigations, which top $1,000 each. United States Afghanistan U.S. Afghan leaders agree on peace push. Taliban doesn't. Washington, AP. Despite U.S. support, the Afghan government's surprising new peace offer to the Taliban is immediately running into a wall. The insurgents show no sign of shifting from their demand that talks for a conflict-ending compromise take place with Washington, not Kabul. The impasse is blocking a diplomatic path out of America's longest-running war and could prove as fateful as battlefield fortunes. The Trump administration says it's escalating pressure on the Taliban to advance a negotiated solution to the fighting, but diplomacy is a distant second to military efforts right now, and the U.S. isn't offering carrots of its own to persuade the militants to lay down their arms. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani's new peace effort includes incentives for Taliban that join negotiations. Roger Bannister, first to run mile in under 4 minutes, dies. London, AP. Roger Bannister, the first runner to break the 4-minute barrier in the mile, has died. He was 88. Bannister's family said in a statement that he died peacefully on Saturday in Oxford. On a windy late afternoon in Oxford on May 6, 1954, Bannister ran 4 laps on a cinder track in 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds to crack the mythical 4-minute mile, a feat many had thought humanly impossible. A few months later in 1954, Bannister beat Australian rival John Landy in the Miracle Mile or Mile of the Century at the Empire Games in Vancouver, British Columbia as both men ran under 4 minutes. Bannister then gave up running to pursue a long and distinguished medical career. Copyright 2018 The Associated Press. All rights reserved. This material may not be published, broadcast, written or redistributed,